this just in. The college football playoff will be announced. It was this time last year, guys, that Tennessee was, I don't know if expected is the right word, John, but fans were hopeful that they could be picked as the number one team in the nation. And sure enough, they were. And I remember you and I discussing it at the time. It was absolutely the right call. Now, they're not going to be number one this year, but last year, that was a pretty special day for the Tennessee football program, maybe second only to the Alabama win last year. It was pretty significant.
Yeah, it was very significant. And I think fans were, not only were they elated, I think some of them were shocked because there's kind of a groundswell of sentiment here about the powers that be aren't in favor of Tennessee. That's the start of a poem. I'll finish it off later. The powers that be aren't in favor of Tennessee, okay?
Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh me.
Okay.
On to something. Let's get to today.
No, but and how long was Tennessee number one? I can't quite remember. How long was it number one?
They lost that week.
Yeah, I was kidding. Yeah.
That was a hell of a 4 days. I remember the parade and all that went on and the fireworks. It was unbelievable.
It was a heck of a first half against Georgia, too.
Here we go. Then that was just the worst timing to get them fired up. And then you got Eric Ainge saying Sanford's a big dump. And they got Georgia ready to go. Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason. Andy Mason, realestate.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, of the next 5 years, how many years will Tennessee be in the college football playoff? Let's keep in mind a couple of things. It'll expand to 12 teams. Tennessee, theoretically, I guess, could win out and things happen in front of them and still make it this year with 2 losses. Teams are going to be able to make it with 2 losses, but there's going to be politics that'll play into that. They're not going to want to take 5 SEC teams in a particular year. So there's all kinds of factors into that. But, John, let me start with you, and I'll go to our YouTube page because it is Today's Tough Question brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate. Best prices, best service in the biz. When it comes to real estate, it's andymasonrealestate.com. Buying or selling, it's andymasonrealestate.com. So, John, what do you say? It's Today's Tough Question. Out of the next 5 years, how many years does Tennessee make the college football playoff?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball here, but I would say Tennessee should make it 2 out of 5. I think that's a reasonable expectation. Can it do it? I'm not sure, but there are a lot of things in its favor. An improved SEC with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, strength of schedule will be good. The Pac-12 just deciding to go out of business, that will help because I think you're going to have to go to 4 Power 4 conferences with the departure of the Pac-12. So I would think that adds another SEC team. I think a 2-loss SEC team should be in the playoff. And if you look at Tennessee's next year's schedule, three games stand out: Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Win one of those and win all the games you're supposed to. The rest of the schedule is not that daunting. Win the rest of those games, you're 10-2, and you're in the playoff.
I think this is about to be I like to think I have my finger on the pulse, but I think this is about as off base as I'm going to be when I share my honest opinion. Caleb, let me ask you first, though. Out of 5, how many years should they be in the college football playoff? Will they be in the college football playoff?
Guys, I think it's going to be 4 out of 5. I don't think it should be that. I don't like the 12-team playoff, but when you're taking 6 wild card teams or 6 at-large teams and the top 6 conference champions, which is laughable with no Pac-12, so you're going to have like the Mountain West and the American champion going to the playoff. 6 wild cards, you're going to have most of those from the SEC and the Big Ten. I think Josh Heupel's got Tennessee at a level where they're not going to be finishing worse than 4th in the SEC over the next maybe 7-8 years. And so if you're finishing in the top 4 in the SEC, I think the top 3 of the SEC are going to the playoff every year. I think every year the top 3 teams in the SEC will be in the playoff, and I think a 4th team sometimes will be getting into the playoffs. So I got 4 out of 5, honestly.
So far on our poll on YouTube, and we encourage you to hit the like and subscribe button, smash it as hard as you can. How many college football playoffs do you expect Tennessee to make in the next 5 years? 2 leads with 68%. So there with you, John. 3, 32%. And we just put the poll up. Haven't had a vote for 4 or 5 yet. So get on YouTube and do that for me. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm stunned. I'm with Caleb, John. I think it's 4. I think that 3 is a bare minimum. I think if you're in the 1 or 2 range, you're disappointed, because the way this is going to be viewed, if you're not a part of the college football playoff, then you're just in some, I don't know, it's the Chick-fil-A Bowl now, but it might be the Hardee's Bowl by then. I don't know what it's going to be. And you're not even in the hunt. So, man, if you judge it like an NFL team, if you're just in the playoffs 2 of 5 teams, you're firing a coach. So I think Tennessee will be in it more, or they've got a real problem.
Well, I just think it's going to be challenging in the SEC, though, Dave. Florida's down right now, but I expect Florida to be better. I think LSU, Alabama, and Georgia all should be in the running for the playoff every year. I mean, those 3 teams have all won national championships in the last 4 or 5 years. I think Oklahoma and Texas should expect to be too. And then you're talking about Texas A&M, Florida, even Auburn. A lot of teams will be competing for this. So I don't know if there will be a backlash against the SEC. You brought it up. Would they say, we don't want to turn this into an SEC playoff? And that shouldn't be a factor. But when you look around, the country, the SEC is clearly the strongest conference, although the Pac-12 is really good this year. The Big Ten is pretty good at the top, but I don't think as many Big Ten teams can expect to make the college football playoff.
Why do you say 4?
I think there was an argument that there used to be anti-SEC bias, particularly Auburn getting left out of the national title game in 2004. I think it's dead. I think ever since that run they had from 2006 to 2012, plus the contracts they got with ESPN, which is where the college football playoff games are televised, I think it's now the reverse. I think it was earned, but I think SEC fatigue or not, the networks, which filters to the voters or whoever the selection committee is, everybody's going to favor the SEC teams now, and they're going to get bias towards their way. And so I think that it's much more favoring. John, I also want to point out that, yes, I agree the SEC is tougher, but given the route the SEC is going, I think life's going to get easier for Tennessee, because whatever type of rotating opponent you have, Tennessee's is always going to be Vanderbilt. That's the one game they're going to protect for Tennessee over every other game. And Alabama's has to be Auburn. They may have to play LSU. But Tennessee's will always be Vanderbilt. And that is the funniest thing about this. It's why I told Dave this yesterday. It's laughable to me that the SEC thinks they can crown a legitimate champion with 16 teams, no division, and just every team plays 8 games. The schedule's gap is going to be so widely different from 2 teams. And Greg Sankey's going to sit there next year and try to convince us, well, a win over Vanderbilt has as much weight as a win over LSU and Alabama.
Well,
you might notice, John, that every person talks in a goofy, cartoonish voice when Caleb does an impression of them.
He's got a generic impression.
Yes.
Yeah, my wife does the same thing. Yeah, I think that is an advantage for Tennessee. But I also think Tennessee could really prosper if you had the divisional setup still. If you had well, of course, if you expand, you would have to expand the East. So the East might not be what it used to be. But if you were talking about today's alignment in Tennessee, and this is all you had, and Tennessee was in the East, it's pretty much, okay, come second to Georgia. and you've got a real shot at making the playoffs. So, under that system, it would have an advantage too.
And to clarify, we're not talking about this year. We're talking about the next 5 years when it's a 12-team playoff. So we have that question on the message board. But John, they're the haves, the have-nots. We're not talking about South Carolina. When you talk about Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, those are programs with the proper support that they should be challenging for championships pretty much every year. If you have a coach, Josh Heupel or whoever, that makes 2 out of 5, as you said, and let's say he gets bounced in the first round, is he on the hot seat despite making 2 of 5?
Well, that's a good point, because will making the playoff be enough? Or will it be like in the NCAA tournament? Tennessee's men's basketball program makes the tournament routinely under Rick Barnes, but then invariably underachieves, and a lot of fans aren't happy about it. The playoff will start out very differently, but it's conceivable. Fan bases always want to be going upward. They don't want to stay the same, and they surely don't want to regress. So, yeah, I think at some point, if you lose in the first round, that would factor into it. If you make 2 out of 5 and you go to the championship game, I don't know if fans would be that upset about that, particularly if you won a national title. You went to the playoffs 2 times in 5 years and you won a national title one of those years. I don't think Tennessee fans would be that upset.
So it's pretty much the Marlins run of the 90s over the Braves run. Marlins went to the playoff twice, won the World Series twice. Braves went like 20 times and only won once.
It's true. The Braves do have that one World Series win, but other than that, I think most Braves fans are like, that was a huge, monstrous missed opportunity, because they should have won 3 or 4 at times.
Well, yeah, talking about the Braves, though, I mean, a couple of years ago, the Braves didn't have the best team, lost their best player, and still won the World Series. So that's kind of how those baseball playoffs can go. We've got 2 wild card teams in the series now. I look at football a little differently. I think fans might too.
No, I agree. Let me ask you this, though, Caleb, before we talk a little bit of everybody's favorite, and that is let me ask you this. If Tennessee were to make the college football playoff twice, gets bounced out, doesn't make it the other 3 years, I mean, is that a coach, Josh Heupel, in this particular instance? It'd be 2024, so 20. Does he go into 2030 on the hot seat? Good Lord, that's projecting a long ways away.
2030? I'll be dead then.
I don't think it's crazy to think about.
You're not going to be dead then, John. Don't just move on, Caleb. We're talking about mortality here.
I was trying to not acknowledge it. It's Halloween. I don't like the juju.
Okay. Are they would a coach be on the hot seat?
I think he would. I think he would, honestly. I think Josh Heupel, if you go to 2030 and you've made 2 playoffs and been bounced out both times, I think you're on the hot seat in 2030. I do.
I think Caleb's a hot seat extremist. He wants people on the hot seat.
He's very pro hot seat and totally not affected by death of people he works with, apparently, either.